Usually everybody starts from the beginning and goes toward the end. I will start from the latest and go upward in history. You must be knowing the famous film Gorkha by Akshay. It's none other than the story of General Ian Cardozo, right? The general, he's injured in Bangladesh war, has got a prosthetic leg, runs marathon, Bombay Marathon regularly. That's the physical fitness of this person. He went into the 1971 war, which is the most historic war of India, because of many reasons which I'll just touch upon, because his book is put in the correct perspective. Then, from the staff college, the general was sent to the war front, where he lost one leg. There are a lot of different stories about his leg. One that he got injured in the minefield and cut off his own leg to actually save his life, and another one he was operated upon, both sides. You can ask him that yourself. After that, he was the first one to become, if you became a battle casualty in those days, you never became a commanding officer, and then you would have never become a general. But the then chief of army staff took him to Leh. He made a request to command, so he took him to Leh and told him to work with him, so which the general did, and therefore he was given the command. The rest is history, that he came up to the level of Major General, right? Became fit, and is one of the most physically fit person. He's got many books to his credit, all of you know about it. It starts with the Veer Chakra, talks about the bravery of the people. It talks about the Cardozo Saab, how it is his Gorkha regiment people call him, because they could never call Ian Cardozo as Ian Cardozo. So they put his name as Cardozo Saab, because they are the Gorkhas. And then he has got the book on the singing of the kukri. And most importantly, the reason, after 50 years, he has written about the braveries of the 1971 war, India's most phenomenal war. In 1971 war എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഒരു പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കാര്യം അത് എല്ലാവർക്കും ഞാൻ പറയേണ്ടത് ആവശ്യമുണ്ട്. 1971 ഈ വാർ നമ്മൾ ഫൈറ്റ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ നോർത്ത് ഈസ്റ്റിൽ പാകിസ്ഥാൻ നമുക്കെതിരായിരുന്നു, നോർത്ത് വെസ്റ്റിൽ, നോർത്ത് ഈസ്റ്റിൽ ചൈന നമുക്കെതിരായിരുന്നു, സൗത്ത് ഈസ്റ്റിൽ ബംഗ്ലാദേശ് നമുക്കെതിരായിരുന്നു. ഇതെല്ലാം പോരാത്ത പോലെ അമേരിക്കക്കാർ 7th ഫ്ലീറ്റ് നമ്മുടെ ബേ ഓഫ് ബംഗാളിൽ കൊണ്ടുവന്നിട്ട് ഇന്ത്യയെ സബ്ഡ്യൂ ചെയ്യുന്നുള്ളൊരു വാദമുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഈ വാദം എല്ലാം ഉണ്ടായിട്ട് ശേഷം 13 ദിവസത്തിൽ ഈ പാകിസ്ഥാൻ എന്ന രാജ്യത്തെ കീഴടക്കുന്ന പോലത്തെ ഒരു യുദ്ധം ഒരു കാലത്തും ഈ ലോകത്തിൽ ഉണ്ടായിട്ടില്ല എന്ന് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് പറയേണ്ടത് ഒരു പ്രത്യേകമാണ്. അത് ഇത്രയും കുറഞ്ഞ ദിവസത്തിൽ ഇത്രയും സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള വാറാണ് 1971 വാർ. ഇത് ദ മോസ്റ്റ് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക് ബിക്കോസ് ഓഫ് ദ 13 days. ആ 13 ദിവസത്തിന് ശേഷം അന്ന് മേജറായിരുന്ന അയൺ കർഡോസയുടെ ബോസ്, അതായത് നമ്മുടെ ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ചീഫ് ഓഫ് ആർമി സ്റ്റാഫ്, അന്നത്തെ ചീഫ് ഓഫ് ആർമി സ്റ്റാഫ്, എവരിബഡി നോസ് ദി എയർ മാർഷൽ, ഫീൽഡ് മാർഷൽ മാനേക് ഷാ, അന്ന് ചെയ്ത ഒരു പ്രോഫറ്റിക് അനൗൺസ്മെൻ്റ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു പാകിസ്ഥാനോട്. ഇഫ് യു ഡോണ്ട് സറണ്ടർ യു വിൽ ബി ഡിസ്ട്രോയിഡ്. ആ വാക്കുകൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അറിയേണ്ടതാണ്. സറണ്ടർ ചെയ്ത് നിങ്ങളെ നശിപ്പിക്കുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു മിലിറ്ററി കമാൻഡറും ഈ ലോകത്തിൽ ഒരു കാലത്തും ഉണ്ടായിട്ടില്ല. ആ സിറ്റുവേഷനിൽ ഫൈറ്റ് ചെയ്ത ഒരാളാണ് ഈ ബുക്ക് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. Now I leave it to the orchestra and General Cardozo to take it on from here.
Thank you, Colonel James. That was indeed a brilliant introduction and a very comprehensive one. And I will just take off from where you left by quoting the words of Field Marshal Manik Shah, who said, "If anyone says that he is not afraid of dying, he's either a liar or a Gorkha." And here we have somebody who epitomizes that never say die attitude. As has just been told us by Colonel James, the 1971 war was one that turned the history of the subcontinent. It was also, in many ways, a turning point in the life of our guest of honor today, General Ian Cardozo, a person whose presence lifts the value of this literature festival hundredfold, I must say. We are indeed honored, sir, by your presence here.
Thank
And
you.
we
Hello.
welcome you with a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
A living legend, General Cardozo.
Thank you.
And we would love to hear about your experience in leading the battalion during the 1971 war.
I think you are talking about leadership, and you're talking about the 1971 war. I think nobody, I think the army officer and the army soldier has a distinct privilege of commanding troops in battle. This is an awesome responsibility, and it falls on very young shoulders, captains, majors, lieutenant colonels. And why is it awesome? It is awesome because they all know that many of them will not come back alive. But why do we succeed in the wars that we have fought? The reason is personal example. The officers, the young leaders, they don't say, "Tum aage jao, mai piche aa raha hoon." They say, "Follow me." So the young officer is right in front, facing the maximum fire, facing the maximum danger. And the Indian soldier, who is the best in the world, follows his leader unquestioningly because they know that their officer is right in front, and it is a fact, maximum casualties are from officers of the Indian Army. My battalion, the 4th Battalion, the 5th Gorkha Rifles, entered the war with 18 officers, and at the end of a 13-day war, only 7 survived. 13 days, 7 survived. 4 were killed and 7 were badly wounded. The remaining 7 either had minor wounds or were unscathed. So, what does this tell us? What is the message that the Indian Army conveys to the people of India? The first message is the word love. Now, many of you might say, what does this army officer know about love? Love may not be a very military word, but it is on the altar of love that men and women of the Indian Army put their lives in the line of fire and disappear in the smoke and fire of battle. What is the meaning of this love? Love for the country, love for the people of India, love for the regiment, love for the life we lead, love for adventure. It is this which motivates the officers and soldiers of the Indian Army to go beyond, go and take the last mile. Can somebody be asked, who is this person talking?
I think it's some disturbance coming from a neighboring venue, probably.
Okay, so the 1971 war was a turning point. My battalion, I was not there. I was in Staff College. The course had been terminated, and I rushed to the battlefield, hoping I'd be in time to catch the last flight to Sylhet, because our battalion was airborne in helicopters to go behind enemy lines and capture a place called Sylhet. But before that, when I was not there, we were tasked to capture a place called Atgram. We didn't have artillery fire. We didn't have supporting fire. So, what is the message? The message is You have to do what is right, irrespective of the difficulties you might face. So what did the CO do? The commanding officer, a very brave officer, Lieutenant Colonel Harolikar, he said, okay, we'll use the Gorkha weapon, the kukri, and we will launch a surprise attack at midnight. And that's what we did. We severed about 32 Pakistani heads. And after that, those who survived ran back and told their colleagues, don't mess with the Gurkhas, you're liable to lose your head. The trouble with the Indian Army is, when you are successful in one operation, then you get more and more difficult tasks. And the next task was to capture a place called Ghazipur, which we did. And then, because we did that, now the corps commander, Lieutenant General Sagat Singh, who was India's most prolific strategist, he got information that the brigade which was holding Sylhet, Pakistani brigade, has moved for the defense of Dhaka and there's nobody there. And he said, send the Gurkhas. So my CO said, sir, is this the only battalion in this corps? We've just fought 2 battles. I need time to reorganize the battalion. I've suffered so many casualties and officers and men. He said, no, there is no time to lose. Move immediately. So we moved. And we were told we would be reinforced within 48 hours. We were never reinforced. We fought for 9 days and 9 nights. And the CO decided, he knew that we would never be reinforced. So he said, instead of taking food and water and blankets and things like that, we'll take more ammunition and grenades. And that is what we did. We fought for 9 days, 9 nights, without food, without water, with diminished ammunition. And at the end of 13 days, 2 Pakistani officers came with white flags. They wanted to surrender. But my CO said, we have got no orders to accept your surrender. Go back. Continue the fight. Why did he say that? Because we were so thin on the ground. We were just 384 when we landed at Sylhet. So they said, no, I forgot to mention that a BBC correspondent before that made a broadcast to say a brigade of Gurkhas has landed at Sylhet. Now a brigade is 3 battalions, it's about 6,000 men. So the Pakistanis heard it, we heard it, and we decided to call their bluff and pretend that we were a brigade. And we did that. And when we accepted the surrender, cutting a long story short, 3 brigadiers, 2 full colonels, 170 officers, 290 JCOs, and 8,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered to us. By that time, we were just 352. So this is what the army is all about. Self-sacrifice, love, honor, determination, commitment. That's the message of the 1971 war. And the book has gone into a 3rd edition, impression. And I think, I don't know, I'm the author, so I shouldn't be saying this, but I think it's a good book for people to understand the 71 war because it is based on personal experiences and it's reader friendly.
Thank you, sir. That's a mighty experience, I'm sure. And in a typical self-effacing manner, I think General Cardozo has skipped all about the limb that he lost or that he sacrificed with his own kukri during that war. I invite all of you to read more about that in the book, The 1971 War. But this is a session that we need to dedicate to this volume, Beyond Fear, which tells us about the stories of the life behind the battlefield. And You know, when you think of the army, military writing in particular, I'm sure there are a lot of images, words, emotions that we associate with it. Fighting and valor and patriotism and that kind of spirit. But beyond all that is this collection, full of stories of love and warmth and peace, written in such a crystal clear, lucid manner. One can only conclude that behind the writing of this work is a great reader, a person who devoted many an hour in between his army assignments to reading, probably a childhood that was spent in reading a great deal. One cannot find another explanation for the beautiful writing that has gone into this volume. Could you tell us about your experiences as a writer before we come to the chapters per se?
You know, the Indian Army frowns upon officers who want to write. They say, don't be a paper tiger. If you want to write, you only write military stuff. So I only started writing 10 years after I retired, at the age of, I think, 63. But it was all along the way. I fought in 3 wars, lots of stories to tell, and so little time. And what is the message of this book? The message of this book, and all my writing, in fact, is to bring the armed forces closer to the man in the street. Because the civilian, they love the army for what it stands for, but they don't know how we live in peace and how we die in war. So all my writing, from the Paramveer Chakra, which has gone into 14 impressions, the Sinking of Iron is Cookery, which has gone into 2 editions, Cardozo Saab. Cardozo Saab is my autobiography. You know, in the Indian Army, we are told, don't blow your own trumpet and don't beat your own drum. So don't talk about yourself. And so, although for about 15, 20 years people have been asking me to write my story, I didn't do that. Till 2 incidents took place which convinced me that I need to write the story, my story, because it's not my story. It's the story of the Indian Army, and it's the story of all Indian Army officers who walked to the same time and space. And I've titled the book as Cardozo Saab, because that's what my Johnny Gurkhas, they could not say Cardozo Saab, so they either it was Katot Saab or Cardo Saab or Kadi Saab or Cardozo Saab. And I liked the word Cardozo Saab, that's how it stuck. So Cardozo Saab is a book which covers all the wars. It covers the first chapter is about life in the Indian National Defense Academy. It covers my wife, who's been my support right through. It covers the aftermath of the war. And I think if you read this book, the aftermath of the war, I think, is something that the citizen needs to know of what the soldier goes through, because life is a gift. And the soldier values that gift more than anybody else, because he has lived in the shadow of death. So to him, life is most important. To him, war is an anathema. No soldier wants war. But when war is forced upon us, what do? As I said, country first. We have to fight for the security of India. And Pakistan has attacked India 4 times. What do? We've got to fight back. Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer has said that the people of Pakistan are good people. I support that. They are good people. But I have a different experience with the Pakistan Army, which I'll not talk about now because it doesn't form part of this book. However, the message of Cardozo is to do what is right, irrespective of the consequences. Sometimes you have to pay for it, but that's okay. So, also, you have only one life to live it to the full. Our understanding is the Indian Army officer is life is unknown. Love is by choice. And our profession is to kill. Because it's not something brutal. It is because there's somebody out there wanting to kill you, and you have to decide whether you want to kill him before he kills you, or just sit back and be killed. And if you get killed, and all of us have that same philosophy, what happens to India? So therefore, the soldier is caught in a cleft stick. He knows that war is an abomination, but he has to do his duty for the country. That's what he's there for. So, do what is right, irrespective of the consequences. And people should know how the how the soldier lives in peace, and how he does his duty in war, and if necessary, give up his life for the country. I hope I've answered your question.
Indeed, sir. It's all about being ready for any emergency at any point of time. That's the duty that you have taken upon yourself. War is all about the danger, the fire, the constant threat to one's life. But there are stories in this volume like J.J. Singh and the regimental bonds, which tell us about the spirit that impels people, members of the family of the army officers, who feel impelled to go back to the army. It's that kind of continuity that you find there in your own family. We acknowledge the presence of Madam Priscilla, General Cardozo's wife here, whom he talked about. And in your own family, you have that continuity, as you have in the stories of J.J. Singh and in the Nepalese family in the regimental bonds. Yeah, so could you tell us about that?
I think the story in the book titled Regimental Bonds expresses the right attitude. You see, the soldier is never alone. The soldier does what he does because he gets support from his family. Basically, his wife. If he's not married, his mother. It is mothers, wives, who support the soldier in most difficult times. The story of regimental bonds states, and there's a poem about it. I'm also into poems on war. And there is this mother, my own battalion, the 1st battalion, the 5th, I served in 2 battalions, the 1st and the 4th. And the 1st battalion, the 5th Gorkha, we have 5 generations of soldiers. Fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great, all serving in the regiment. So there's a bond between the family and the battalion. Now this family had 2 sons. So one joined the army and the other was told, you'll have to look after the homestead in Nepal. And the battalion went to Sri Lanka, and this boy, Neer Bahadur, was killed in an ambush. So we had a tradition that if a boy dies in battle, the whole battalion contributes 1 day's service, pay, salary, and that is given to the wife or the mother. So this one JCO who lives closest to this widow, not widow, wife, mother and wife, takes the money to be given there, and while he's walking up, they ask him, "Where are you going?" So he says, "To so and so place." "Oh, how did you know that he has died 11 days ago?" So the JCO now realizes that this wife, this lady, has not only lost her husband, she's also lost her eldest son. So he goes there and he sees this lady sitting in the sun, and she gets up and says, "Bhim Bahadur Sahab, how did you come to know, how did the battalion come to know that my husband has died? You are far away in Sri Lanka, aren't you?" So he says, "Mataji, yes, we did not know, but we know now. And I'm sorry to inform you that you've also lost your son." So she sits down and tears roll down her cheeks. And she says, "How did it happen? Did he die a death like a good soldier?" That was what is her focus. And he says, "Yes, Mataji, he died a great death, and we captured and killed a number of the Sri Lankans." Then there are footsteps sounded, and the younger son comes. He's brought firewood from the jungle, and he sees the JSO. He comes running. "Saab, what news have you brought?" So the mother says, "Go and make Saab a cup of tea. I will tell you." So he makes a cup of tea and brings it to the JCO. And then she says, "It is not right that the bond between my battalion and the family and the regiment should break. Take this boy with you." So he says, "But Mataji, what will happen to you?" She said, "Don't worry about me. The line is more important. Our connection with the battalion is more important." So that is what the army is all about. Without trying to be arrogant, in my humble opinion, I don't think there's any life which can equal to life in the defense forces. I'll just read a couple of lines of this regimental bonds, which epitomize. Last few lines. So she comes to know that her husband has died, her eldest son has died, and now what next? So the poem says, "But wait, there's someone out there waiting. Her youngest son stands still. The war is not abating, and they hear, no, her youngest son stands tall. The war is not abating, and they hear the regiment's call." She asks him, "Are you willing to take part in the fray? Though a heart is near to breaking, but the line must have its way." He answers yes. He's eager. His eyes are all alight. He's thinking of his mother, but his heart is in the fight. Her son soon enlisted. The line is now intact. He fights his father's battles, but she's alone, in fact. Now she's talking to God. And she says, "He's the last one in my line, Lord. My only pride and joy. Will you keep him safe in battle? He's just my little boy. Will he come home safe and sound, Lord? He needs to have a wife. For the line to be unbroken, he must start another life." So this is what the army is all about. This is what our values are all about. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, it's so touching. And that's the same reason why in the story of Jai Singh, we find that there's this family which, out of great respect to a fellow soldier, names names a son of every generation as Jai Singh. Yeah.
See, there is no war which is not prompted by greed. Greed for power and greed for money. Any war, whether it's religious power, political power, economic power, social power, whatever. All wars start because of greed. Greed for power and greed for resources.
Yes. So I think that is precisely the point where we can dwell upon Pakistan. And I'm facing two army officers here who definitely will have their take on Pakistan. In the immediately previous session, we heard Mr. Manishankar Iyer talking about Pakistan. And we did note that General Cardozo had a question then, which he could not ask then due to lack of time. But we would like you to talk about that. But also, there's this heartwarming story in this collection. It's not too late. It's never too late. Where you have, an Air Force officer getting his due after many years of his sacrifice, all because of an entry in the history of a particular war as chronicled from the Pakistan point of view. So, that war breeds definitely strange bedfellows, I would say. And it's not always a black and white binary system, I guess. There's a lot of gray in between. And it's not the arch enemy out there, but there's something that you gain even from your encounter with the enemy. That is what that story spoke to me. I would love you to share that experience, with the audience.
Yeah, you know what Mr. Manishankar Iyer said about the people of Pakistan and the people of India. It also applies in a way to army officers of both the armies. The Indian army officer and the Pakistani officer on UN assignments or in foreign countries, they get on beautifully well. At the same time, we have to go to war and kill each other. So, wars are fought by young people who kill each other without knowing why, by old people who don't know each other but make the young officers kill each other. So war is something which is not good at all. But it happens. And I have so many stories to tell. I'll tell you a story about what happened in 1965, because I think stories convey in the best possible manner what war is all about. In 1965, the Lal Bahadur Shastri was the Prime Minister, and the Pakistani army came very close to Akhnur, and if they captured Akhnur, the line to Kargil and to Punch and the alternative route to the valley would be lost, and Jammu was just 18 kilometers away. So he took a very strong decision to open the second front, and we attacked Pakistan in Punjab. So in that war, a place called Dogarai had to be captured. It was captured by 3 Jat, and the CO was an Anglo-Indian officer, Lieutenant Colonel Desmond Haid, who got a Mahavir Chakra. But when I was in the academy, he was my platoon commander, a captain. And he told me, Wars are won, battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground. And he was tasked to capture Dogarai. Now, normally when we attack in a ratio of 3:1. If the Pakistani battalion objective is held by 1 battalion, we have to attack with 3 battalions. Why? Because many will die from artillery fire, from mines, machine guns, etc. So by the time the troops reach the objective, there should be at least the same strength as the one which are holding the objective. But there was no such superiority of strength. And Lieutenant Colonel Haid said, I'll capture Dogarai with 1 battalion. It's a long story, but he did that. He did that and captured Dogarai. But the task of 11 Corps was to threaten Lahore. And that meant, after capturing Dogarai, they had to go beyond. But that was to be done by a brigade. But Desmond Haid decided, after capturing Dogarai, to walk the extra mile. And he went on to a place called Batapur, which was just 12 miles from Lahore. But now, Pakistan would throw everything they had to throw out this battalion. So the brigade ordered the battalion to come back. And the CO and the men were very, very upset. They said, this is an insult to the comb of the Jats and to the Jat regiment. If Dogarai has to be captured again, we should be given the task. By that time, Dogarai was reinforced by an armored regiment and a brigade. Now mind you, an armored regiment and a brigade of 3 battalions. And Desmond Haid said, when told that another battalion and the brigade would attack Dogarai, he said, when? They said, after a week. He said, no, that will be too late. You've got to do it now. If you can't do it now, give it to me. The Jats will capture Dogarai because they believe it's in their destiny to capture Dogarai once again. And he addressed the troops and he said, many have died in the capture of Dogarai and many more will die tomorrow. And I am going to lead you. But if I die, I want you to carry my body into Dogarai because that's where I want to be tomorrow morning. And then he said, where will we be tomorrow morning? And the whole battalion rode in Dogarai. And they captured Dogarai once again. This small battalion of 550 people killed, there were about 900 bodies which littered Dogarai. So this is what the army is all about. This is the man who said, battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground. Life is an adventure or it is nothing. And that's what the army is all about. Adventure. But we don't have to look for adventure. Adventure comes looking for us. Every day in the Indian Army, particularly I'm not talking of peace stations, I'm talking of in the forward areas. Every day, something or the other is happening. Every day is a challenge. I rang up somebody the other day on a weekend, and she said, I don't answer calls on weekends. In the army, there is no weekend, there is no holiday, there is only 24/7. We believe in country first. We believe that the army and the soldier is dispensable, but the honor of India is not. And therefore, we will do all in our power to keep the country safe. I was talking to a group of children in a school about India, its resources, material and personal. And I said India can be the most powerful country in the world. And a 12-year-old boy put up his hand and said, "Sir, do you want India to be the most powerful country in the world? Do you want India to be the richest country in the world? Or do you want India to be the best country in the world?" This was a deep philosophy from a 12-year-old boy. And best country means we all need to be happy. Every citizen of India, we need, the Indian Army owes its allegiance to the Constitution, not to the party in power. I hope that continues because there are inroads being made today to break that up. But we believe in the Constitution, we believe in India, and we don't believe in supporting the party in power. Politics are not a part of the Indian Army. And that's how it should be. I hope that continues.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, all these stories, the ones that you have narrated, the ones that we generally hear about, they're all about men in uniform. And here is a question that I cannot stop myself from asking. That is about women. What about women in the armed forces? And I'm really happy to note that two of the stories here in this collection are about women officers. And it's not mere tokenism. Okay, I'll just write a story about a woman for the sake of representation. No, they are women who play, very prominent roles in their own lives, and they are women who have agency. The story of Ward number 21, Simran, the last one, and Captain Courage's Lakshmi in the first story. So, your views about women in the army.
There are 13 stories in this book. And the book is titled Beyond Fear. It tells us how we live and how we die. There are 4 stories about women. 2 are about army doctors. 1 is about an army mother. 2 are about army mothers. 2 are about Bhagwan. Now you'll say, what does this Fauji know about God? But you see, when everything fails, God plays his part. You are going to do your bit, and if you believe in the Creator, he will help you out. That's what I believe. So, 4 stories about women, 2 stories about Bhagwan. 1 is a ghost story. I never believed in ghosts till I went to Lansdowne and came face to face with a ghost. So, 1 is a ghost story. Interesting. And it's the only story because my granddaughter, who's now studying for dentistry in Barcelona, she said, "Grandpa, why are your stories so with nothing about romance? Put some romance into your stories." So into this ghost story, I put a bit of romance, and everybody has liked it. Also, as Bindu has said, I'm involved in every story in some way or the other, but somewhere in the background. I don't want to tell you too much about this book because then you won't buy it. I've told my publisher that I'm going to say at the next book launch, if you buy the book and don't read it, please don't buy it. If you buy it, for goodness sake, read it. They say, no, please don't say that, because we are interested in the book being sold. But there is a message in all these books, and in particular, this one on Beyond Fear, which we are talking about, which applies to the corporate sector, it applies to wives, mothers, teachers, everyone. And that is, you see, as Sam Manekshaw said, as you also said, there is no one can say that he is without fear, because if he does so, then he's either a liar or a Gurkha. Now, I fought 3 wars with Gurkhas, and I know what he said is absolutely true. But the issue is, where do we go from here? The message is, whether it's the corporate sector, whether it is mothers, whether it's teachers. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the question you asked me about.
About women.
No. Before that, you asked me about the pilot. There was the Indian Air Force launched an attack on a Pakistan airfield at Sargodha. There were missed airs which had just enough fuel to hit Sargodha and come back. And they were told, don't indulge in any theatricals. Just knock out the Pakistani aircraft on the ground or in the air and come back. So one of the pilots who's known as Tail End Charlie, he was the last person, and he was protecting the people who were going back. When a Pakistani supersonic starfighter came after this officer who was piloting a missed air. Now he was told, you come back, don't get involved with battles with Pakistani aircraft. But he had the choice of coming back, but he could be shot down. So he turned around and fought the supersonic aircraft and destroyed it, and himself got destroyed. But there's nobody to tell his story. Nobody knew what happened. It is only about 18 years later that the Pakistani pilot who was shot down tells the story in a James Fricker is the person who wrote the history of the Pakistan Air Force. And this story was written there. So the Indian Air Force now comes to know, 18 years after the event, that this officer shot down a starfighter and he got no award. So his commanding officer fought the system in Army Air Force headquarters, and after 23 years, he was given a Mahavir Chakra, but his body lies buried somewhere in a farmer's field somewhere in Pakistan. So this is what the armed forces is all about. Commitment, dedication to do whatever is needed irrespective of the consequences, because country comes first.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And I take your answer to the question about women also in that comprehensive way that you answered about, it's not just the women who are out there in the army, even the women at home, they form a formidable force since they hold fort when the officers are away.
Yeah, the first story is about Captain Courageous. It's about RMO, Regimental Medical Officer, a woman who is medical officer to an all-male battalion. So she's made history already by being the first female officer, medical officer, in an all-male battalion. Now the battalion of my regiment, which is now going to the valley, and the military hierarchy doesn't want this medical officer to go there, because if something happens to her, what will the media say? What will people say? So at that time, I was the colonel of the regiment. Colonel of the regiment is like a grandfather of the regiment who solves problems which are informal and in an informal way. So I met the brigade commander and the div commander and the corps commander, and I told him, this woman, this RMO must go. I said, she's not going to be a combatant. She's only doing a combat role in a combat area. To cut a long story short, finally, this girl goes and is the first woman officer of the Indian Army to get a gallantry award for service under fire. That's the first story. I won't tell you more about the rest because then you won't read the book.
Yeah, and we've also got a reminder from the organizers that time is almost up, but I must tell the audience that, as your granddaughter did say, it's not just about, the dry warfare that this book is all about. You have romance, you have even humor in uniform. There are some interesting stories like the Memento and the story set in Goa, where you have, the very humorous side of General Cardozo brought out to light. I leave the readers to those stories. But before we wind up, do we have any questions from the audience? It's not every day that you get to talk to a living legend of the battlefield. Yeah, please. Can the organizers please give a mic? We'll take just one question before we wind up. Yes.
Yeah. No, you're first. You're first.
Thank you, sir. So my question is, if you had a chance to live your life once more, will you still choose the life you had right now?
Of course, there's no doubt about it. As I was saying, life in the armed forces has no equal. My eldest son joined my battalion, the Gurkhas, and he commanded a battalion. He fought in counter-terrorist areas. See, you have to decide what you want in life. I'm not saying that the armed forces is the best profession. By no means. I'm not saying that because I'm an army officer and I will say that. It is for you to decide what you want to do with your life. Do you want to live a life of adventure? Or do you want to go to the same office, see the same people, do the same things, get bored? I'm not trying to denigrate any other profession, but I'm just saying you need to choose what you want to do. You have only one life to live. Live it to the full. Enjoy yourself. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, General Jan Cardozo.
Okay. General Sagat Singh is the best field commander that India has ever produced. I, as a member of my battalion at that time, felt that he was a little bit unfair with my battalion. If he insisted that my battalion goes again and again and again into battle, despite the heavy casualties of officers and men, and delivers each time, surely we deserve to get better battle honors and honors for those who died and those who served. But that didn't happen. I'm not trying to say that, I don't know, that's what I feel. But Sagat, without doubt, he was a very impatient officer. He wanted to be the first in Dhaka, and he was. 71, you see, I'll divert a little. The Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, at that time, was only wanting to capture enough ground, enough territory in East Pakistan, so that the refugees could go back. But there was a person in Eastern Command, General Jacob. General J.F.R. Jacob made it very clear, both to Sam Manekshaw, Army Headquarters, to the Prime Minister, to the Ministry of Defense, that unless Dhaka falls, we will not have achieved our aim. And he was 200% right. And he was helped by General Sagat, who was the person who translated Jacob's strategy on the ground. Sagat was not the only officer. He was in command of 4 corps. There was also 33 corps, there was 2 corps, and there was 101 comms zone. So there were other forces also. All played a great part in that battle. But Sagat as a field commander, I'm not talking about his other peccadillos, was an outstanding field commander, and we need more like him in the army. If you have, we platoon commanders, company commanders, battalion commanders, brigade commanders, all commanders are called tigers. We are supposed to be tigers. But both in 1962, you see an army of sheep commanded by a lion can do much better than an army of lions commanded by a sheep.
Thank you very much, General Ian Cardozo, Dr. Bindu Amarit.
Yeah, just a minute. That's what happened in 1962 and what happened in 1971. We had a strong chief. If you have pussycats as chiefs, God help this country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The stories will go on, but in true army tradition, let's be punctual more than anything else and allow the guests of the next session to come over. We thank you for this engaging session, sir, and hope that all that the army stands for, the selflessness, the order, the discipline, the punctuality, these are things that will take us forward long into the future. Thank you very much, and thank you to the audience as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bindu Amarit and Colonel James Puvantingal.